Thank you very much, Dr. Jones. I appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. So my topic is about leadership and more specifically engagement. Engagement is critical because it leads to commitment and performance. So I'm saying that right from the beginning. When we talk about leadership, what kind of picture do you have of a leader in your mind? So think about, who is this person? Is it a person sitting behind a desk telling everybody what to do, how to do it? Or is it a person who rolls up his or her sleeves and works with the employees? The person obviously here who's rolling up his or her sleeve works with the employees. He's the one that's engaging all her employees, all of obviously her colleagues. Overall, leadership is not about position power. It's not about the rank. It's not about you giving me a title. It's basically about making a difference in somebody's life or a difference in a community. So the essence of leadership is basically that. Influence and obviously making a difference. You and I have debated the idea of, are leaders born or are they made? That debate has gone on for years and years. Obviously, my answer to that is, all leaders are born. If they weren't born, they wouldn't be here. So we have to be born in order to obviously live and exist. But I come from HR background, so I don't think there are certain traits leaders are born with. From HR perspective, training and development, I think we make a difference in making leaders, in helping ourselves obviously learn more, get more knowledge, and become leaders. So you've seen research on intelligence, IQ, maybe EQ is being discussed now more and more, which is important obviously for leadership. Body size, nationality, gender, are these the traits that perhaps make some people leaders, some people not so effective leaders? About the traditional picture of leadership in the past. Usually we were familiar with military and religious hierarchies. So our definition of a leader, our picture of a leader, used to be a male. Obviously, gender has nothing to do with effective leadership. But our picture used to be that because for thousands of years, that's what we knew. So now, obviously, things are a little bit different. We have more pictures, more role models, and they're not necessarily gender specific. So you look at Forbes' 100 most powerful people in the world as of last year. In Pakistan, you might picture, obviously, when we think about leadership, you know, Benazir Bhutto, a very popular leader, one of the few countries with a female prime minister. So, obviously, many countries cannot say that. Now we have maybe at least 4 or 5 countries that have female leaders. But think about Angela Merkel. Those who picture leaders as enthusiastic, as strong, or being tall, or being male, well, these individuals are not males, they're not necessarily the typical examples of what people perceive to be a leader. So when I see Angela Merkel, for example, and she's talking to other people, she looks like a very kind aunt. Always saying hello to people, how you doing, welcome, very hospitable. But think about how powerful she is, how much influence she has, obviously not just in Germany or in the European market, but all over the world. So our picture of leadership, obviously, these people are changing that. We're learning more and more about effective leadership. It's not about, I told you to do this, and you must do it in 5 minutes or 2 days or 3 days. There are obviously different ways of doing this. Christine from France, now she's running IMF. Very, very powerful position, obviously, so a lot of influence here. In terms of business, you see Sheryl Sandberg. Facebook didn't even exist over a decade ago. But now, obviously, with new ways of thinking, innovation, empowerment, these leaders are obviously connecting people all over the world. Hewlett Packard just had a good success rate of female CEOs. So they're making a difference throughout the world. So as leaders, we need to learn before we can lead. I think that's the requirement of it. In every given situation, we have to learn about our employees, and then we can engage them properly. Without learning, we don't know what our employees want, and obviously we cannot engage them properly. We all have a deep and natural desire to be involved. So employees want to be engaged. problem is not the employee. Oftentimes, it's really the managers, the corporations, the infrastructure that's set up that's basically keeping employees from being engaged. So we need to prevent people from being actively disengaged. Think about the local example here in Pakistan. In 2009, I read Professor Beg's material, and he said that National Bank of Pakistan decided as part of their talent management program to hire qualified females into management positions. So they're not giving these females the position because they're female. They're qualified females who have been working for the bank. So now they consciously say, okay, let's go ahead and experiment, promote these females to see what the result would be. 65 females were promoted to branch management positions throughout the country. Now what they discovered a year later is astonishing results. In 90% of these branches, profits increased by 150%. The only difference, obviously, here is the fact that you have a female leader in the branch. In 85% of the branches, advances went up by an average of 200%. So obviously the picture of leadership should be different because we have a lot more diversity. We need to take advantage of, obviously, the diversity that exists. So when I mentioned those traits of IQ, nationality, body size, gender, yeah, those are obviously important considerations, but they don't make a person a leader. It's the individual that obviously makes himself or herself a leader. It's what's inside that person that makes him or her obviously effective. Think about today's leaders. This statistic, 14 to 30% of employees being engaged in the workplace. What about the other 70% of the employees? We're not involving them mentally or obviously in some cases physically. So if 70% of them are not actively engaged, that means a large portion of them, about 20 or close to it, 20%, are actively disengaged, which means these people actually can destroy your computers, kick the machinery, because they're not happy with your company. Another 50% or so, they're basically neutral. They do what you tell them, but that's basically it. They're not committed in any way, shape, or form. Again, the blame here, obviously, the companies, the leaders, as well as the employees themselves. So we need to involve people. You've seen these statistics before. When students, for example, are involved and engaged with you and I as faculty members, they tend to learn more. When we require them to speak, to research, to say, to do, they tend to retain more of this material for long term. So we know involvement is critical for engagement. So involvement and engagement obviously leads to retention, in buy-in, in commitment for our employees. I like Bruce Lee's statement because he says, knowing is not enough. So we get a lot of knowledge the last 2 days. A lot of research-driven empirical studies, good knowledge. You know, it's not enough. We must actually apply it into our lives to be role models and then obviously engage our employees so they can be committed. Motivation is not enough. I can be very excited. Yes, I want to apply. I want to lead the discussion. But if I just have the motivation, excitement, and not actually initiate, that means no good results are going to come about. So we need to apply and we need to do because it's all about the employee. And this balance must stay there. When we're trying to change the system, there's nothing wrong with that, but we also need to look at the people side of it. So we need to have a people orientation as well as system orientation. We need to manage the systems and we need to lead people in the right direction. Because in the middle of that is actually the worker. When he or she is disengaged, he or she is stressed. So we need to have a balance of developing people as well as fixing the structure. Sometimes organizational culture is unfortunately structured to keep us immature, to keep us from being engaged. And most of you are familiar with Chris Argyris. In management and leadership, at least, we study the history of management. He says companies are designed to keep employees immature. So on this side, the left side here, passive, dependent, few behaviors, and so on. He says managers sometimes are not confident enough, they don't have the competence, so therefore they keep employees immature. This way you stay where you are. What I tell you to do, you do, as opposed to getting you involved. So this is one of the problems, unfortunately, when it comes to engaging employees. So we need to move people from passive to active, from dependent to independent, so they're on this side. The more, obviously, they're on the maturity side, the more empowered they are and the more engaged they would be with us. You remember this Chinese proverb, very popular. I used to actually see one version of this in Farsi or in Persian in Afghanistan, but in the US, we study this in leadership as well. If you want 1 year of prosperity, grow grains. If you want 10 years of prosperity, grow trees. If you want 100 years of prosperity, grow people. The countries that obviously have moved forward, they've grown their people. They've invested quite a bit in education, in development of faculty, development of students, development of staff, and obviously development of the workforce. So leadership is a process of influence from one person to the other. It's not from the boss to the employee alone. It's also from the employee to the boss, from parents to children, from children to parents. So think about that 4-year-old little girl who cries in a shopping center. I want this candy, I want this candy. And you as a mother or father say, you cannot have that candy. You already had a candy. I want another one. What do? We give in because we cannot basically force the child. The child starts crying, having a tantrum. That's influence. That little boy or little girl, 5-year-old, is influencing us. Leadership is about influence. I advocate Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard's situational leadership model. I think he has the best leadership model for corporate workplace. As I told you, I became aware of it in 1987 and 88. And it was probably the best leadership model that I still know in terms of practice. Now, academically, it's the most criticized model, but it's the most widely used model in government, in corporations. Why? Because it is practical. And he was kind enough to give me permission to use the model for my book about Afghanistan. So he actually wrote the foreword for it and gave us copyright to use it. He says that leadership is about diagnosing the situation. The readiness level in terms of maturity. So R1 is a person who does not know how to do a job and he or she has never done it before. And there's no motivation. R4 is a person who can do the job at any time. She or he has done it. So you determine where the person falls. Then you use an appropriate leadership style, and that would be telling the person what to do, selling them on the job, participating with them, or delegating it to them. So you match the readiness of the follower with your leadership style. How many of you are familiar with this motto? So the key is to give everyone the opportunity in a sense of satisfaction to be in the in-group. The LMX model that you and I have studied says that there are those who are in our in-group and those who are in our out-group. Those who are in the in-group, we tend to be more sympathetic with them. We tend to understand them and they get more opportunities, obviously. So the key is to get more people to be in the in-group so they can be actively engaged. To obviously think about what we see, what we say, and obviously how we behave. There has to be a consistency between all three of them. Some of you might have seen this slide. How many of you have seen this? Okay, some of you have. Those of you who have not, how many of you see a young lady when you're looking at this picture? How many of you see a young lady? Okay, how many of you only see an older lady? So, if I see a young lady and you see an older lady, what do I think about your perception?
It's about what you want to see.
Well, I already... sometimes we see what we want to see, yeah. But if I see a young lady, you see an older lady, who is right? Who do I think is right? It's me, right? It's me because I can only support my thinking. I cannot support your thinking. I would also think that, well, you're wrong. And this is a problem, obviously, when it comes to conflict. We don't see it in the other person's perspective. So the key becomes we automatically assume that they are wrong. And obviously they assume that we're wrong because they can only support their perspective. So the idea here is obviously not to jump into conclusions and make judgments based on first impression of the other person. Give the person some time, learn about his or her needs, and then you can engage that person more effectively. So hopefully everybody can see both the young lady and the old lady at the same time. So perception is our own reality. That's the only thing we can see. You may not see what I see, but it is my reality. Two people can see the same thing. Both of them can be right. It's not logical. Sometimes it's psychological. We just have to obviously be open-minded as leaders. Three people, even if you see three different things, all of you would be right. And I think this is the responsibility of the leader, not to assume that the other person is wrong. So the employees, when they come up with a suggestion or a question, we need to keep an open mind. Employee engagement can reduce resistance to change and increase commitment. If they are involved, obviously, they would be committed. Look, there's nothing wrong with satisfaction because then I'm committed to the company, hopefully, in my job. But here we're going about employee engagement. Employee engagement is very different. It's about going above and beyond the call of duty. It's that discretionary effort that you put in to obviously get maximum results. Employee engagement is about capturing the employee's head and heart. Employee engagement is about making the company and the employee successful. Employee engagement is about mutual agreement, mutual commitment between the employee and the company. So this is a definition of engagement that's a bit more comprehensive. It's about unlocking the employee's potential. So she or he can basically soar above and beyond your expectations. Think about these statistics. Again, this is 2013. I showed you 2007 from Teresa Wellborn, but this is 2013. Highly engaged employees are 480% more committed to the company's success. 480%. If you were impressed by the statistics from the National Bank of Pakistan, imagine, what you can do with engaged employees, whether they're male or female in the workplace, or obviously other dimensions of diversity. They're 250% more likely to make recommendations to improve the job or the success of the company overall. How do you engage employees? How do you increase their trust in management? Managers have to care about their employees. Managers have to show integrity as leaders. So what is integrity? It's basically doing what you say you would do. It's making sure there's agreement between your mouth and your walking, your actions. And third, demonstrate competence. How often do we promote people who are not competent about their job? They have maybe other skills, but we promote them in finance department. Well, they have no competence in finance. They have no background, so why are we promoting them in finance? Obviously cronyism, obviously favoritism, obviously because he's my brother, she's my sister. This obviously causes disengagement in the department. So engaged employers should know who their paddlers are. These are the people who are actually engaged, who are passengers, just sitting there basically doing their job but being a good soldier but not necessarily being actively engaged, and who are actually those employees who are sinking your company into bankruptcy. But the key is, as leaders, we have to aim for maximum engagement of our employees and have high expectations of our employees. Somebody said you should always aim for the moon. Even if you don't make it, you'll still be among the stars. You'll be very near. And let me go ahead and close with a couple of statements here. Effective and engaged leaders are those individuals who think with their head, act with their heart, and obviously demonstrate through their actions, their habits. And last but not least, let me give you a little poem. Charles Jarvis says that life is a bother, life is a hurry. Life is a bother, life is a hurry. Life is a busy, crowded way. Good intentions go astray. I had a friend the other day. I haven't anymore. He passed away. I meant to write, to phone, to call. I didn't do any of those at all. I only hope that he can now see how much his friendship meant to me. Life is a busy, crowded way. Good intentions go astray.
Thank you, Mr. Bahaudin. Dr. Bahaudin, I'd like to become a great leader too, but I know it's very difficult to become a leader. But I have learned a lot from the speech made by Professor Bahaudin. Thank you. And I think all of you, some of you may have some very, a lot of questions to ask. Yeah, now we come to the question and answer section.
I think one of the things you see about Nelson Mandela is the fact that he lived according to his values. So he was against apartheid and obviously the challenges that most black Africans faced, and even though they were the majority. But he went to jail for years and years because of his values. So I think his values were clear enough to where he lived according to it. He spoke for the majority. And what is right, regardless of the fact that he might go to jail. So I think the clarity of his values was probably the key there. That's a good, thank you so much for covering the literature or history of engagement. Because unfortunately it has not changed, the statistics stay the same. However, I think my personal perspective is yes, we cannot change everybody or the statistics, but we can change those obviously who are managers and come to our workshops or want to learn about leadership. And when I was doing leadership training, many managers would say, did my boss come to this workshop because he or she really needs it? I said, but you're also a boss. Yes, your boss may need it, but you don't want your employee coming here 5 years from now and telling us, did my boss come to this workshop? Because it's not about your boss. It's not about the statistics or changing it. It's really about ourselves. And so that's the only thing we can control, obviously. But unfortunately, yeah, the statistics have stayed the same. Yeah, no, I personally don't believe in that. I think there's things that maybe the physical body is designed men that we might be a little bit better, but then there are many things that women are better. But when it comes to leadership effectiveness, research shows that in many cases, actually, females are better leaders than us as men. Because in this interesting statistic, they now, medical scientists say that the brain of the male and female are wired differently. The female's brain is able to communicate faster between the left and right side of the brain. So they can actually make decisions, actually not decisions, but they can reach the right conclusion faster than men. So a lot of times if you have a complex problem, you ask a female, she will say, I think we should do this. You ask the male, he says, let me think about it. Now, but the female came up with a solution faster, but you say, are you sure you're right? She says, I'm not sure, no. The question is, why is she not sure? It's because she doesn't go through this linear process that men go. We go from A, B, C, D to reach a conclusion, where their brain communicates faster, therefore they reach the conclusion sooner.
Please discuss with Professor Bahaudin at lunch after the session.
How time flies, time to sleep, my darling, close your eyes, lie down, lie, listen, darling, to my lullaby. The sky, time goes by, tiny stars will glimmer upon high. Bless your heart and your play, bless your soul to sleep, cast away by your side, I will stay. Dear, don't cry, I'll be by you till the dawn is night. Try How time flies. Time to sleep, my darling, close your eyes. Lie down, lie. Listen, darling, to my lullaby. Evening's night. Soon the moon will sail across the sky. Time goes by. Tiny stars will glimmer upon high. Bless your heart and your play. Bless your soul and your day. Go to sleep.